The ground is disappearing, and nobody's talking about it. There is a farmer in Utah who woke up one morning, walked out to check on his land, and found that a piece of it was simply gone. Not stolen, not flooded, not burned, gone. Swallowed by a crack in the earth so wide, so deep, and so jagged that his fence posts were dangling in midair over nothing. He stood at the edge of it, this thing that had not existed the night before, and he had no word for what he was looking at. That crack is still there. It's bigger now, and almost no one outside of a handful of geologists and a few devastated landowners knows it exists. That is where this story starts. To understand what is tearing open the Utah desert, you have to go underground back to a time long before any of us were here. Beneath the surface of the American West sits one of the planet's great hidden systems, aquifers. Ancient reservoirs of water locked inside layers of sand, gravel, and porous rock, built up across thousands of years of rain slowly filtering down through the earth. For most of human history, those reservoirs were untouched. They just waited, holding the land above them, the way bones hold a body together. Then we found them. Industrial agriculture arrived in the West, and it was thirsty. Cities expanded into the desert and needed water their rivers could not provide. So we drilled down and we started pumping billions of liters, year after year, decade after decade, hauled up to the surface to grow food and fill pipes and keep a civilization running in a place that was never designed to hold one this large. Think of it this way. Picture the ground beneath your feet as a dense, water-soaked sponge. When it is full, it has structure. It holds its shape. The water trapped inside is doing real mechanical work. It is part of what keeps the weight of everything above it from caving inward. Now wring that sponge out completely. Watch what it does. It compresses. It collapses in on itself. The tiny spaces that once held water crush together permanently, and the sponge ends up thinner, weaker, and smaller than it was. And unlike a real sponge, the earth does not spring back when you let go. The compression is irreversible. The structure that held the surface up is gone. That process has a name: subsidence. The slow, invisible sinking of land as the underground support beneath it is systematically drained away. And when subsidence is uneven, when one section of an aquifer collapses faster than its neighbor, the surface above it tears apart along the seam. One side drops, the other holds. And the earth splits open like a wound that the landscape has no way to close. No explosion, no warning, just the slow, quiet arithmetic of extraction finally collecting what it is owed. So if the ground is genuinely coming apart, why is nobody treating this as an emergency? The answer is geography. The fissures appearing in Utah are out in agricultural land, remote fields, dirt roads, counties where the biggest local story is usually a water rights dispute or a late frost. The people bearing the cost of this are farmers watching their irrigation infrastructure drop into sinkholes and their fields crack apart at the roots. Their stories are real, but they do not make for viral footage. There is no skyscraper tilting, no city street collapsing on the evening news, so the alarm never gets raised. But here is the mistake in that logic. Subsidence does not stay where it starts. It follows the water table, and the water table is connected to everything. The same aquifer systems running dry beneath Utah's alfalfa fields are tied to the hydrological networks feeding suburbs, supplying grocery chains, and filling the wells that small towns across the entire region depend on to survive. The crack in the remote field is not someone else's problem. It is the first sentence of a story that ends much closer to home. Let's talk about how that story ends when we choose not to read the first sentence. Guatemala City, 2010. A perfect circular void opens in a residential neighborhood 30 meters wide, 30 meters deep, and swallows a 3-story building whole. The people who lived on that street had no warning, no tremor, no creak, no sign. The ground was solid, and then it was not, and by the time anyone understood what was happening, there was nothing left to save. Seffner, Florida. A man goes to sleep in his own bedroom. In the night, a sinkhole opens beneath the foundation of his house. fed by the silent erosion of limestone aquifer walls that had been weakening for years without a single visible sign. His family is in the next room. They hear nothing until the floor is already gone. And then there is China, where subsidence has advanced so far in certain cities that entire urban districts sit measurably lower than they did 2 decades ago. Not millimeters lower, meters lower. Roads buckle. Underground pipes shear apart without warning. Building foundations develop fractures that engineers never accounted for, because no engineer designs for the ground itself to quietly disappear. These events look like disasters. They feel like disasters, but they are not random. They are not geological bad luck. They are the invoice arriving at the end of a very long tab, decades of extraction without accounting, of treating the underground as a resource with no bottom and no consequences. There is always a bottom. There are always consequences. Back in the Utah desert, the fissure is still growing. It is easy to look at a crack in a remote stretch of farmland and feel nothing in particular to file it away as someone else's geography, someone else's season of bad luck. A curiosity for scientists who specialize in things most people will never need to think about. That instinct is understandable. It is also the reason slow disasters are allowed to become permanent ones. What is opening in the Utah desert is not a local story. It is a signal. It is the earth using the only language it has, physical, irreversible, undeniable, to communicate something that spreadsheets and policy papers have been failing to communicate for 30 years. The underground is not infinite. The support beneath our cities, our farms, our roads, and our foundations is not a given. It is a system, and like every system, it has limits, and those limits do not negotiate. The tools to respond to this exist: aquifer recharge programs, smarter extraction limits, infrastructure designed with subsidence in mind. Other countries have already started doing this work, and the places that have taken it seriously are measurably better off for it. This is a solvable problem, but only while there is still something left to solve. The problem has never been the science. The problem has always been the attention, and attention, unlike groundwater, is something we can choose to direct. So the next time the ground does something the ground is not supposed to do, the next time a road buckles for no clear reason, a building develops a crack that wasn't there last year, a field that was flat last spring has a ridge running through it that no one can explain, don't scroll past it. Don't wait for the national alert that may never come. Remember the scar in the Utah desert that was growing quietly while everyone looked the other way. Remember that disasters do not always arrive with sirens. Some arrive in silence, over years, in places no one is watching, until one morning a farmer walks out to his land and finds the earth has already made its decision. Remember that quiet was never the same thing as safe. And ask yourself, what, exactly, are we all standing on?